Welcome into Vandy on SI. I'm Joey Dwyer here with Graham Bacco. Graham, big one for Vanderbilt football tomorrow in Columbia. We'll both be there. We are making the trek to Columbia tomorrow morning. That's going to be a heck of a road trip, Graham. But we're gonna get through it and be an exciting game at an exciting place. And man, I'll just start here, Graham. If Vanderbilt wins this game, this thing could blow up.
Yeah. I mean, if they win this game, not only do I think they should be ranked, I'm pretty certain they will be ranked if they win this game. I mean, you can't really, comparing resumes with every other team in the country, you can't, you don't find many teams with two road wins, two big time road wins in that this early in the season. So if they were to win this game, so I think they will be ranked. And then, you don't want to look too far ahead, but these next two games after South Carolina are games they should win on the schedule, especially if they want to go to a bowl game and higher class type type of bowl game as well. So if they can win this game, I mean, shoot, you're looking at a good chance of going to 5-0 going into Tuscaloosa in October. This game is a very big one. It cannot be understated.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about this a little bit with Dylan yesterday. The perception around the team thus far is, well, they're good and they clean the locker room and they're well coached. I don't know if the dialogue is still. They've tried to make the dialogue this, but I still don't know if it's about they're a college football playoff contender or they're going to win this many games. It's, well, they're a good team, and I think that can change this weekend if they go win. I don't know how you can't take them seriously if they go and beat South Carolina and Columbia. And Graham, that betting line has dropped a few points. It
Yeah.
feels like there's a real chance for this to actually amount to something. Which, man, if you told me that when I got another beat that they would be 3.5 point underdogs against the top 15 team on the road, man, that's unbelievable for this program. They've still got to do it, but I think that's a step in itself to see that. It's kind of jarring.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I believe the line opened at what, 6.5, six,
Mhm.
something like that. And to see it go down throughout the week, down to all the way three, cut in half, that's saying something, and it's saying that people are starting to pay attention to this Vanderbilt team, and I'm sure they watched last week's game. They're like, holy moly, like this team just went on a road and stomped Virginia Tech in the second half. First half more, not the greatest that we've seen Vanderbilt play, but second half was incredible. And yeah, I mean, it is very insane to see just the betting line cut in half, people starting to pay attention to Vanderbilt. And we will see how seriously Vanderbilt is taken now if they were to win this game, because I still feel like there's some disrespect to Vanderbilt where, I think it's more brand wise in a way, because I think if you were to call Vanderbilt, like, pick any top of the SEC, pick, let's say Vanderbilt was named Georgia or Texas or whatever, I feel like they would more at least have a lot more votes to be ranked, if not ranked, with a big road win at Virginia Tech. So I still feel like there is some disrespect going toward Vanderbilt, if I'm being honest, in my view. And I think tomorrow night is a chance to prove that Vanderbilt is a real team. Like this is no joke. Last week wasn't a fluke. So yeah, again, this is big, and I think Vanderbilt really wants to be taken seriously, and I think they're gonna go all out and do their best to do that.
Or, Graham, I think it's a good point. The AP poll, I think, really values preseason expectations, and Graham, we're media people. We don't want to be wrong, so I think that's a lot of it too. Like, I don't know that people didn't expect them to ever be ranked, but I think it's a little early for people to kind of change their minds about them. I think for you to be ranked as a team that isn't ranked in the preseason top 25, you've got to do something that's pretty special to get on people's radar. USF did it. I think this is the weekend that Vanderbilt can really do it, and that's not to say that they won't be ranked in heading into Tuscaloosa if they're 4-1. I don't know that that's all that unrealistic, honestly, to be ranked at 4-1. But man, Graham, if they can go do it this weekend, I think you got to kind of ignore what you thought of them in the preseason and say, man, they're a real threat here to actually do some things. And I think if you really take a deeper look at them, they are better than they were last year in a lot of ways. But we've talked about that before. I think this weekend is really interesting. South Carolina has obviously invested in some stars, Dylan Stewart, Lenora Sellers, two of the better players in the league. I still don't know that they've necessarily proven to me that they are a juggernaut or anything near it. I think probably on paper they're a better team than Vanderbilt, but I certainly don't see a way uh, that this is any foregone conclusion, Graham.
Yeah, and I think a big talk this week was about the streak that's been happening, where Vanderbilt has not beaten South Carolina since 2008. So it's been 16 in a row, and you got to think like at some point it's going to happen, right? At some point, some streak is going to end. We saw a couple years ago, with Tennessee finally beating Alabama in Knoxville in what 2022, I believe it was. So at some point, a streak is going to end, and I think this Vanderbilt team is certainly capable of doing so. Like it is not out of the realm of possibility that this Vanderbilt team could do it. And I think people like to forget last year, like it was a 7-0 game at halftime, and then it just so happened where was the first play or second play coming out of the third quarter where South Carolina threw that 50, 60-yard pass down the field, and it was just, it scored a quick touchdown, just kind of sucked the life out of Vanderbilt after that. So again, Vanderbilt, this team can compete. They have the guys to compete. They have the experience to compete. And yeah, I mean, again, you got to feel like at some point this streak is going to end. Maybe it could be this year, but it just feels like it is very close to that streak ending.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a team that's going to do it, you've got to feel like this is the team. They're wired differently. They talk over and over again about how it's the new era of Vanderbilt. I mentioned to you in the press box at Virginia Tech, like every presser we've had after a post game this year, which isn't all that many. It's two of them, but we've had Cedric Alexander in game one tell us this is a new era of Vanderbilt having to sell out and blowing out a team like that without their best game. Asked Jordan White kind of a similar question in Virginia Tech, like it wasn't your best game and you guys still found a way to win by 24. What does that say? It says it's the new Vanderbilt, and he said we push people around now, and it's not the Vanderbilt that's and I guess this is paraphrasing. He's essentially saying it's not the Vanderbilt of old that has to do everything perfectly. So, Graham, I think that's a big deal, and I think that mentality is maybe helpful in this regard. But I mean, I think a lot of people watching us are pretty jaded about potentially beating South Carolina. There's a 16 in a row is the streak here. Haven't beat them since 2008. Clark Lee is a player in the early 2000s, was 0-3 against South Carolina. All of his teammates essentially went without beating South Carolina. We talked to Marlon Sewell on Tuesday. Pretty much all of Marlon Sewell's teammates at Vanderbilt have left without beating South Carolina, actually all of them. I mean, that's a big deal, Graham, and it's almost like this Vanderbilt team could take up for a lot of its past players by doing it this weekend. They haven't said that, but it just feels like, man, there's so many guys that have paid their dues with this program who have had great careers. You look at Jordan Matthews, you look at Oren Burks, a Super Bowl champion last year. None of these guys can say they beat South Carolina. For this team to be able to say they can do it, man, that would be something, Graham.
Yeah, it's crazy that, a lot of these guys can say that they beat number one Alabama, but they have not beaten South Carolina. It's very
Hmm.
interesting.
And they haven't got close either.
Right, exactly. I mean, the last time, I believe it was 2021, was the last time that South Carolina beat them by less than two scores. And I
Mm,
think it was 11 out of the last 16 where South Carolina has won by two scores or more. So a lot of these games, Vanderbilt just simply has not come close. And
hmm.
we you just think about this, and you mentioned how it's a new era of Vanderbilt football. I think something that I also notice in these press conferences is the tone that they're talking and the confidence that they're speaking with. Like with Jordan White, he's like he's saying this is the expectation now. Like as the offensive line and from the offensive line unit, like this is what you can expect from us, and this is what you should expect from us is to push other people around and other teams around. So I just feel like the tone and the confidence that the players are also speaking with this year just feels different than past years, and you can notice it in their voice when they say it. Um, but again, we've also heard this week, I think, is from the weekly press conferences and from the players in practice, is we're not really focused too much on the streak. We're more focused so on ourselves. But I think you got to think, Joey, that in the back of their minds, they are really thinking about this streak. I think to at least an extent where they're using it as fuel that they want this streak to end now.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting. Bryce Henderson on Tuesday. But Graham, I don't know when we're going to talk to Bryce Henderson again. I don't know if Vanderbilt's going to throw him out there after that presser. He was a great presser, but basically said not enough people are talking about Vanderbilt, and basically that Vanderbilt's going to show South Carolina what's up on Saturday and go find a way to win. I think that's the attitude that you've kind of been referring to throughout this whole thing. That's a microcosm of it. We'll get into South Carolina a little bit before we get out of here. Overall, I think has been all right relative to expectations through the first two games. I thought they looked good against Virginia Tech at times, but probably could have won that game by a little bit more than they did. Maybe could have got some more breathing room early. Kind of go through, and I think the thing that stands out to me, Vanderbilt was really able to run it last week. South Carolina by far has been this is in PFF, so take it with a grain of salt, but by far South Carolina's best attribute is its run defense thus far. And granted, might mean Vanderbilt's got to use the perimeter a little bit more than maybe it has in the past. And I think that's an interesting way to have to win against a South Carolina team like this. I think they're really strong up front. And man, if Vanderbilt can get the run game going, I think all bets are off. But you might have to see some Diego Pavia magic if they're going to win this game. And I think that's a hard thing to ask for them to kind of be one dimensional if South Carolina's run defense is actually up to billing.
Yeah, and I talked to Gamecock Central, South Carolina beat writer Jack Feltry, and he was telling me the defense is by far the defense of South Carolina is by far their best unit so far this season. They have not allowed a touchdown this year. Now, sure they play South Carolina State, but still they didn't even allow a touchdown against Virginia Tech. So yeah, the defense and getting through especially I think the run offense for Vanderbilt against the South Carolina run defense is going to be a critical point in the game where, if Vanderbilt, how can Cedric Alexander and the rest of the run game, can they get it going? Can Pavia improvise? Can he get some, can he participate in that run game? And how well and how effective is he going to be able to do that? That is a big thing to watch, I think. And then also, I mean, the South Carolina, even the defensive backs, like they replaced, Eman Worry and all those guys from last year, but they still restocked and reloaded, with other good guys in the back on the back end of the defense this year. So I think in the passing game as well, like Vanderbilt in Pavia is going to have to, like you said, do some magic. Trey Richardson, I think his speed could hopefully, it should be a factor, I think, in helping aid against the South Carolina secondary, trying to get past the secondary down the field. So, and I think also as well the offensive line. I think we got to talk about the offensive line getting the push against the defensive line. You mentioned Dylan Stewart. So, can the offensive line even give Pavia? Can they give Pavia enough time to let the guys get down the field and let Pavia throw the ball or improvise or do whatever?
Yeah, and here's a for reference. In so South Carolina's run defense was graded above an 83 in both of its first two games. Its pass rush was graded below a 67 in each of the two games, and then its coverage was graded below a 68 in each of the two games. So kind of tells you like there could be a little bit of a stark difference there. And obviously, I think this is South Carolina's toughest game yet. So we'll
Yeah.
really see kind of what it's made of at that point. But Graham, Dylan and I talked about this a little bit yesterday too. Feels like an Eli Stowers game to me,
Mhm.
where we really haven't seen Eli Stowers become all that dominant at this point. Obviously, he's had a lot of attention on him, but just feels like he hasn't broken out the way that maybe we thought. And I think week one, maybe that was due to health. I had been told that he was on somewhat of a snap count in that game, and I think he was healthier against Virginia Tech. But man, this could be a game where they need Eli Stowers to be Eli Stowers. And honestly, I think Trey Richardson stepping up last week was a big deal. Cedric Alexander doing his thing last week was a big deal. This offense isn't going to get to where it wants to go without Eli Stowers having the type of games that Eli Stowers had last year. I think time for him to step up, Graham.
Yeah, no question. I remember asking in the in the press box last week, like, where is Eli Stowers? Like, it
Mhm.
feels like through these first two games, he has not been a huge factor. But
Mhm.
we gotta remember, like, this is an all SEC tight end here. Like, he can play. He has not gone anywhere. He is still effective and can be effective. And remember last year against Alabama, he had I forgot how many catches it was, but it was over 100 yards. I can't remember if he had a touchdown in the game, but regardless, he had over 100 receiving yards against Alabama. So he has proven that in big games like these, he tends to play his best in these games where he'll have sort of his best career games against the teams that matter the most in the biggest games on the schedule. So I gotta think we have to see him involved a lot more than we have seen these past two games of the season. So, and you mentioned the snap count, so I can sort of give him grace in that like I can totally understand why he was not
Mhm.
effective or didn't really play a big role against Charleston Southern. Last week it was a little bit surprising to see that he wasn't a big factor on the road. But again, tomorrow I would expect him to have a very solid game, by far the best of the three yet.
Yeah, and Graham, I think looking at his stats, I think would kind of indicate to you that maybe he's been better than we're giving him credit for. He obviously had the 41-yard reception against Charleston Southern. I think just he has more ability to make an imprint on a game really than he has at this point, and I think they'll really need him to. Obviously, he had 86 yards against Charleston Southern, but 41 came on that one play. Not to discredit his performance, but I think Eli Stowers even has higher expectations for his performance than what we've seen. Graham, we'll look at South Carolina's offense before we get out of here as well. I think their passing game is one that I think could be worrisome for Vanderbilt. They've got some good receivers. Nick Harbor obviously has been a topic of conversation. Could he be breaking out this year? Maybe it is the year for him. Vanderbilt's corner is going to be tested again, obviously. Really lived up to the challenge against Virginia Tech, and I think weren't tested as much as we thought they would be. I think struggled a little bit in the first half, but really locked down in the second half. And I talked with Dylan about this yesterday. Lenore Sellers, Clark Lee says is better when he's able to use his legs and get out of the pocket and be able to make throws downfield that way. I don't know if Jack kind of echoed that sentiment. You can tell us whatever you want about that conversation, but again, I think a big test for Vanderbilt's defense. And Graham, what say you, especially kind of with the context of knowing more about South Carolina after that conversation?
Yeah, so what Jack had told me in our conversation the other day is he was telling me like South Carolina's offense has not really gotten going yet. I mean, you saw the slow start against South Carolina State where it was the second quarter and they had no points on offense, and then you got the punt return touchdown, then sort of the floodgates kind of open from there. But even against Virginia Tech, like you saw South Carolina go right down the field on the first drive, and then after that, it was two and a half quarters or so of just slow offense until they had the 60-yard touchdown to Nick Harbor. So what he told me he's looking for is can the South Carolina offense finally start to get into a rhythm? We have not quite seen that yet, and we saw in Clark Lee's press conference earlier this week where he talked about the defensive line and how it's going to be make or break sort of with the defensive line. The defensive line is going to have to win the game for Vanderbilt, and or at least will be the most important part in so. So and he also talked about that long catch last year where it was the second play of the third quarter, and you had Corday Sidner about to sack Lenora Sellers, and then he somehow magically escapes and just throws the 50-60 yard pass down the field, and it was just heart wrenching. I feel like for Vanderbilt at that play where you feel like you got him and he was about to be sacked on like the 1 yard line or something like that. So to go from that to giving up a big play, Clark Lee talked about like they have to get home and they have to close out the plays and they have to finish the play and play through the whistle. So yeah, again, I think the defensive line getting home, making sure that you contain Lenora Sellers in the pocket and not running out down the sidelines is going to be a big factor tomorrow night.
For sure. Graham, we'll get out of here now. I gotta get to class, honestly, is why I'm trying to time crunch us here, not to I could hear from Graham all day, which I mean Graham and I are gonna get sick of each other on Saturday morning driving to South Carolina. Sunday morning we might rip each other's heads off on the way back from Columbia, but we're gonna make it back and we're gonna talk next Friday as well. But Graham, glad we could do this. I think I want to remind people subscribe to the channel. We're
Yes, please
our
subscribe.
I mean, if you're an analytics guy, our numbers with view to subscriber conversion rate are not good right now. So be sure be sure to subscribe. Don't get Graham and I in trouble on the weekly staff meeting on Thursday. Make sure to subscribe, like, and we'll keep producing Vandy content. We had a good week this week. I think we're at 3 podcasts now, and then a rapid reaction to Ethan and Baco's Vanderbilt commitment, which is a big deal in its own regard. Supposed to talk to him tonight, so tune into Vandy on SI on YouTube, subscribe, and then visit the site for all types of South Carolina content. Thank you guys for watching. God bless. We'll talk soon.
Thank you guys.